Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome and thanks for joining us. You've tuned into another episode of the Old Terps podcast, brought to you by the good folks at No Amendment. Fellas, for everybody listening in the car, this is the voice of Andrew Terrell, the coach.
Coach, this is Kevin Huerter. This is just Kevin.
Travis Valmon, number one prospect in the country.
Reese Mona, former 5-star.
He wishes he was a 5-star.
We're just saying things that aren't
Reese
true.
Especially that.
Especially
Reese
that.
Mona. My favorite Reese Mona story of all time is the first pregame we ever had. Kevin and I are setting up the living room for the festivities. Good fun night with the boys.
Clean fun.
It was one of those where you're
always clean fun. Always
you've got an extra scoop of detergent.
The cleanest form.
Yeah, you got an extra scoop of detergent in the laundry because we're gonna be clean clothes that night.
Gotta clean.
Anyway, Reese shows up and is fired up about joining the squad. At one point, he was quoted saying, "No, I think I'm gonna actually play this year." I said, "Reese."
This guy is just lying.
Everybody was like, all right.
Back me up, Kevin. Back me up.
It was, it came in with some expectations. We just had to, Andrew had to set him straight.
Because he tweeted his damn commitment 4 times on Twitter. You looked through his Twitter in 2015, it was Reese Mona committed to Maryland. I'm so excited to join the Terps. He was on the court 8 times, bro.
Well, Reese Mona hit him.
Put this way,
Reese hit him with the first and foremost, I'd like to thank God. You know you're committing when you start a statement with that.
Well, it was almost, I started to believe it because honestly, I looked up Reese's high school highlights. I don't think I looked up Trav's till like mid-freshman year.
I showed up.
Reese was like on the visit where it was like, I mean, we were talking like Reese was coming in and he was playing. I was like, all right, like, let me go look. You know, he played with Ant. Let me go look up his highlights. And so he was one of the first. Andrew, I don't know if do you have highlights on YouTube?
That's crazy.
Hey,
I think I tried to find
you guys remember the Austin Rivers thing a couple weeks ago where it's like, in his generation, only 5-stars were getting hoop mixtapes. No, I didn't pay some guy to hold a video camera in the stands for me to go out and get 15 to 18 points on 7 of 45 shooting. Like I'd be the best.
They said Drew had no buckets. That's what they're talking
about. Reese has no idea that DMV basketball. Yeah, it's strong. Reese, I would have locked you up in every facet of the game.
Wow.
But what happened?
What are you talking about? Reese Mona led the dude. No star player is taking charges. I never taken a charge.
That's a fact. I was never a star player.
Reese was first team all hustle. You would have hated playing against him. You wouldn't have guarded him. You would have pointed to someone else to guard him because it just would have been too much effort for the full 32 minutes of a high school game to be like, dude, I am not boxing this guy out.
Yeah,
I'm not guarding him.
Grow up, bro.
He's being too physical.
I took a 2-hour calculus test. I'm exhausted mentally and physically, and I got Reese is nagging all over the court, taking charges, diving on the floor. I got my coach yelling, play as hard as he plays. It's just like, shut the hell up. Go home. Go back to the farm.
Reese is just lucky he never got drug tested for steroids because that guy, there's no guy stronger in the gym. I mean, the guy is just a hustle magnet. I've never seen somebody get on the floor more often than Reese.
Well, here's the thing. If you're Reese, if you're one of the few white guys on your team, either you shoot the piss out of it or you take charges. And Reese was out there.
He wasn't shooting the piss out of it, so he had no choice. He wasn't shooting it.
Hey, high school, I could shoot it. I could shoot that thing. I was 42%. One practice, some freshman, I was wide open, didn't pass it to him. He said, Reese, why are you going to let that freshman not pass it to you? You need to look at him and say, give me the fucking ball. I'm shooting 40% from 3. What are you doing? I was like, damn.
I'm a hate right now.
And then Reese jogged over, gave him a pat on the ass and said, it's okay. He wasn't yelling at anybody.
And then college, couldn't shoot that.
Yeah.
We gotta get Antsy on the pod to confirm or deny these claims.
Ant will be on the pod. Ant stuck up for Reese in a big way at the beginning because of that comment Reese made of potentially playing. Like I said last podcast, we're not, walk-ons aren't coming into play, guys. You're there to look good.
The one thing
and feel good.
The one thing he did, though, I'll give him credit. Reese got some real minutes at the end of his career. So I guess
he balled out. This is not a diss on Reese at all. Reese played in a round of 32 game, like, serious minutes. Not a lot of people in the world can say that. I'm so glad that I can't say.
You remember my sophomore year, we were at home getting our ass kicked by Michigan. Yeah. Remember, it was like a big game, big crowd. We came out, they got an early jump. Reese checked into the game for somebody, and we're like, we're picking up full court now. Shit, like I'm pointing like, yeah, Reese, you got him. I'll get this guy back here. He hit a couple steals, transition layup. The guy was fired.
Bro,
up.
I remember that layup.
And,
that layup was fired
by
too
20, but I think those were fire.
Hey, little right.
Was I the assist on that?
Little right-handed with a little backboard slap.
Ant.
You outled to Ant. Ant passed it to me, and I thought Jordan Poole was going to send it into the student section. I was nervous, but he didn't go.
We were getting whooped so bad that Duncan Robinson was talking nonstop shit, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," he wouldn't shut up.
Was he,
bro?
I don't know if Duncan was ever.
He walked by the bench. We were down like 40 at halftime. I was there in a walking boot. Drew was next to me, also in a walking boot, and he was jogging to the locker room. And he looked at us. He said, and I know his voice sounded like this. He was like, "Y'all getting y'all ass whooped."
I remember you actually telling me that as we walked into the locker room. That same quote, he said, didn't know his voice sounded like that. I didn't remember you saying that until you just brought that up. But that is true.
I've been playing against him for 6-7 years now. I don't know if I've ever heard a full sentence. Actually, he's got a podcast. I think that's where I heard him talk. But he's never really talked at all on a basketball court, at least to me.
Huh.
Nothing either way. Nothing shit talk. No, it's more just the guy just goes about his business. That's a little surprising.
Okay. Maryland, Michigan State. At Michigan State. Craziest game of all time because we started out 15-0. Even worse, we were at the end. I forget who played before us, but it was a big game. So you just had the little scoreboard in the top right corner, and you were tracking it, and it's like 7-0, 11-0, 14-0, and you're like, oh shit, is this going to be Michigan all over again?
Yeah.
State of Michigan did not start games well for us, but Michigan State, we battled back, did a lot of good things.
It took us a sec. We had to settle into that game. I think that was a game we were worried about going into it. You don't go into Michigan State. Maryland does not have a very long history of going in and winning at Michigan State unless Anthony Cowan or Des Wells is on your team. Yeah. So that's a tough game to go into and win regardless. The 15-0 start, it was like, okay, we might get ran out of the gym, but give us credit. We battled. We had a chance to win that late in the second half. We battled. We just grinded out the game. And you kind of come away with it. I feel like, for me, it wasn't the game didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth. It was we started off horrible, but you came away from it that turned out better than expected. It showed the fight. We weren't overwhelmed in that environment. And then obviously went home and got a well-needed W at home after. But the way we fought and battled in that game was nice to see.
I thought Izzo was going to absolutely lose his mind on the sideline because there was a period of time in that second half. They turned the ball over 5 times in a row, just stupid shit. Joey Hauser just dropped the ball on the floor and ran back down on defense. I don't know, and it's you don't really expect that from a Michigan State team in early February. You think they are pretty well-tuned, fine-tuned. They turned the ball over, I think, 4, 5, 6 times in the last 10 minutes, and that's how we got back in the game because we were just getting run out. Hakeem got a couple easy buckets in transition, and we've talked about that before, as a theme, transition points because we don't shoot the ball well, and we also didn't shoot the ball well that day. We were 3 for 22 from 3. I don't know how you kind of expect to win Big Ten road games when you shoot 13% from 3.
Well, and I don't think that Michigan State team or this Michigan State team is that good, but I still just think going to Michigan State, it's highly unlikely that the Terps got the win. But I think there's no plus sides and no positives for me for losing, but they did fight. They fought hard, And it was cool that they did have a chance near the end, even though they started down 15-0. I think that if they cut that 15-0 run, start the game, they have a great shot to win at Michigan State, which is good. And like Trav said, they shot the ball awful again, but still almost beat Michigan State on the road. So that's good signs. And then, like Kev said, then they went to work and beat a Penn State team that they should beat at home.
When you guys think of Michigan State,
I know we're not a Michigan.
When you guys think of Michigan State, what's the first word that comes to mind besides but like theme
Toughness.
of their team?
Toughness
Every day of the week
for sure.
And they run.
Exactly. And when you think toughness in Michigan State, you think maybe not as much. I mean, they do, box you out hard. They're strong. They're physical. But I'm talking more mental toughness on the side of they don't make stupid mistakes. They get back on defense. They don't give transition points. They rebound hard, and they push the ball. That whole game, what Travis was alluding to when he thought Izzo was going to lose his brain, that is so unlike Michigan State, and maybe not as much this year, but that's a huge, attribute toward Maryland in us taking them out of their comfort zone in what they are notorious for the past 20 years of Michigan State basketball, which I think is a huge plus for Maryland that we were able to do that.
And it's like,
and with their physical toughness, though, too, is that they chuck cutters. And if people don't know what that is, if you're trying to cut or roll to the rim, I saw one time Juju was rolling, and the guard coming up just hits him. And they're not going to call that against Michigan State because, one, Izzo would erupt. The place would erupt. So at Michigan State, you're going to get hit. It's going to be a foul, but they're not going to call it. And I saw Jameer try to throw it to Juju on rolling, and a guy just chucked him, and it was a bad turnover. And seeing that, you're like, what type of pass was that? But it's Michigan State is chucking, literally hitting a cutter as he's trying to go to the rim, but the refs will never call that at Michigan State.
I will say, out of like all the programs we play against consistently, I think I respect them as much as anybody because, first of all, like Drew said it 8 times, toughness. We say like, teams embody, like they take on the persona of their team. And not only like they physically tough, they're pretty mentally tough. Like they don't really get rattled very often. They shake off mistakes. They're resilient, guys like that. And the other thing is like when you play Michigan State, you know exactly what you're getting. Like they don't change up for anybody. Like you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to run. They're going to play physical defensively. They're going to run those wide pin downs and get a guy coming off for like a mid-range shot. And it's like, I don't know. I think that's like something programs should aspire to is just like, that's us. That's who we're going to be. If you want to beat us, you have to be better at that.
And they run in such a high volume way that empty side, it's not even an empty side. It's a top of the key pick and roll with a shooter in the opposite corner that's coming out. And then it's a choice between the guard and that corner.
Replace.
Say it again, Kev.
The roll replace. Like they run a ball screen and they loop their wing back behind the plays. So it basically like if you're that weak side defender, you have to either take away roll or defend a shooter, and most of the time you can't do both.
What would you say?
It's tough. Like they've always ran it.
How would you guard it? Is it literally pick your poison, or is there a way to guard that you think?
Like you got to pull. I mean, obviously you scout it. So if you didn't scout it, it would be a single man eye, like a single tag. The way to guard that on that side is you got to tag them high, tag the roller high, so you kind of chuck them like Reese had said, chuck them high, and then you get out to the shooter to kind of take away the roll. But if you scout it, you can pull defenders from the weak side. You can see it coming. Like they'll load one side of the ball in front of the ball.
Yeah.
And usually that, if you have a regular defense, the low man on the strong side is a no help for a roller. But if you're scouting it, it's coming. Like you can use that guy to help too. But it's a tough play. I mean, I remember playing against it. It was Cassius Winston, Miles Bridges, and I think they
McQuaid.
The McQuaid guy back in the day, or Josh Langford like filling behind. And I remember they got us on it the first time, and then after I think we called a timeout and went over it again in the huddle. But it's like they've always ran it. It's a tough play to guard.
That's the thing, though. You're saying those names. They don't. The issue with them this year, they don't quite have that personnel this year, like
at all.
Because back in the day, it was Cassius, it was Langford, it was McQuaid, it was Miles Bridges, it was Nick Ward, and all these guys who were like you had to really, really guard.
Jaren
Jackson, like they had guys, like they had guys.
Well, you know what you can do now is you can go under everything. So those pin downs go under.
Tyson Walker will shoot. Tyson Walker will shoot. Now, he's a killer.
He's the
only one though. The rest of the guards won't.
You can also
shoot.
kill them.
Hauser is streaky. They don't have the same personnel this year.
I couldn't agree more.
I think Hauser's kind of worked out for him the way he was supposed to. I think Hauser was supposed to kind of go in there and be
he's supposed to be his brother.
And it kind of always right. Well, it kind of always feel like he's in foul trouble. He's not quite as effective. Like I don't know.
It's
like he doesn't. He's not a typical guy that Izzo gets to go there, right? Like,
but his freshman year,
misses.
It's a little bit. He's a little bit of an outlier.
supposed to be a stud.
Misses shots by like feet too, which is so rare for like a guy that shoots it as well as he does. Like I'm saying does with a question mark because he hits big shots, but man, he misses a ton of open shots, which you can't have when you're running those. You know, you need somebody to chase on that pin down. That's the only way their offense works. Or you can't have somebody that can just plug the paint. You know, if you're going to be the shooter, you're going to be the guy. You got to hit at a pretty consistent clip, especially when they're wide open.
His issue, I think, is he said, like, if y'all remember his freshman year, he was like on the trajectory to being like a stud, like a really, really, really good college player. And he hasn't really taken that next step to being like the guy. Like, he's a good college player. He's a great role player. He will get you 10-ish points and some rebounds every game. But he was doing that his freshman year. And you're thinking, like, okay, year by year, he might turn into like 18 and, you know, I don't know. He just hasn't panned out quite the way I think we would have thought.
Agreed.
It's because I don't think he can do as much as he has to do for this team. I think, like you said, he's more of a role player. I don't think, and Kevin says he's in foul trouble. Yeah, he's guarding guys I don't think he should be guarding. I think he's kind of out of position, and he has to do too much for Michigan State than he really should be.
I agree.
And also, we want to talk about story and going against the old Michigan States. This is just a story about Darryl Morsell, how funny he is and how much he doesn't care. But we were down 30 at Michigan State, and Darryl's talking to
Miles Bridges.
I remember this.
Miles Bridges. And we're like, what is he saying? We're
Daryl's
down
a
30.
freshman, by the way.
Yes, and then they're at the free throw line, and Daryl's talking trash, and he's like, and Miles Bridges is like, bro, look at like scoreboard. We're up by 30 scoreboard. But Daryl's like, y'all stink. He was like, scoreboard. Darryl goes, no, you personally suck. To Miles Bridges as we're down 30. It's like, bro.
I remember him
because he low key was locking him up. He was in him and he's like clapping in his face, like, yeah, like the Darryl, just smiling, trying to get him going. He's like, you suck. And Miles is like, bro, you're down 30. He's like, no, like you personally, you suck. And like Miles, I think Miles was like one of those like, bro, I'm from Flint. He's I'm from Baltimore, bro. Like Baltimore. I'm from like right away. Darryl came out.
That's why everybody loved.
And I remember sitting there feeling like Darryl, shut up, bro.
especially because like
he just smiled. Like Darryl would just smile.
And it didn't matter. Like being down 30 on the road is such a demoralizing feeling. There's nothing good because not only are you thinking about the end of that game, you're thinking about the locker room when Turgeon yells. Then you're thinking about the plane ride home that's going to suck. You don't get home till 3 a.m. and then you have to walk around campus the next day and everybody looks at you like, you suck. And it's like, you know, Darryl didn't care. He was one of those like all-time best teammates for kind of every situation where he never got too high, he never got too low. He kept the room light, and man, he played harder than shit. So no, but he was always funny. Anyway,
he's the best.
Ahead,
he is I think like out of all like all-time great teammates, he is one of the best. This is a story I always say. We were in Italy and on that foreign tour, 2018, we were on the bus. Drew, you got sick.
Yeah.
You started feeling bad. You were like laying down like you about to throw up.
Sick.
People forget I was hungover that
Andrew was hungover as hell that whole time.
Ant isn't like in the back of the bus like, man, shut up. Like, don't care.
Almost beat the shit out of him, by the way.
Darryl stood up. It was like, Drew, you okay, bro? You're like, yeah, I'm fine. Whatever. I'm trying to take a nap. Darryl like took his shirt off and was like fanning you off in the back of the bus for like 15 minutes on the highway. And I was like, how many guys playing Division I college basketball would stand up and fan off their teammate on the highway? You know what I'm saying? Like, right. That's not like.
And it's no offense to Drew or us, but it's like that guy starts.
Yeah.
And this guy, we don't play, but he would do that.
He would do that for anybody,
any of
bro.
us.
He's like one of the best guys, genuinely best guys, probably ever.
I also think that
kind
of segues into also like this was a question, and I know we're gonna hit the Penn State game here in a second, but somebody was asking about how it was being a walk-on, if like people on your team thought of you differently or less, and it's like the same way we don't look at Kevin the way a lot of people would. We're like, oh my God, he's in the NBA, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's cool. But like, we don't look at him like that. Same way he doesn't sit there and be like, oh, you don't start in the Big Ten. You know, he doesn't give a shit. Like, it was kind of like that with our whole team. Everybody treated everybody equally in their own niche. So like, you know, you didn't go up to Anthony and go hyper mode. He was chill. He was calm. Wanted to play video games. You know, he was one of those type of guys. Nobody looked at anybody differently. And I can always say that was probably my favorite part of being at Maryland, you know, in the role that I was in, at least.
Well, here's the thing, though, is all 15 players, whether on scholarship or not, got up at 6:30 a.m. to go lift, and we're held to the same standard. You were on the sleds just like I was on the sleds, all getting up for the same thing. We were all going up to study hall, studying the same stuff. I'm trying to cheat off Reese and Travis and to get into the business school for 2 years. Like, we were all going through the exact same thing at the same time. All that matters, like, just our minutes in the games were off. But it's like the same benchmarks. The coaches held everyone to the same standard, and all that like went into it. And like, there were times like, you know, old coaches and you know, old staff members, you know, would try to put a line and you try to kind of create things. And like, I feel like every player always had each other's back, because it was like, you know, we always had a rule. On days you had a lift, like, you took care of your roommates, you knocked on their door to make sure they're awake. And it was like, that was like the little thing that everyone did, at least at Maryland. I know you're talking about, like, you know, nobody treated anybody differently.
I think it's part of the experience.
There was also
that, like, it's just something like it's hard to like put into words, but like that's part of the experience that goes well, like, you know, under the radar, behind the scenes, is like, you go to war with these guys 24/7, 7 days a week and everything, right? Like, again, study hall, going to war, weights, we're going to war together. Kevin has to make a free throw to end the lift, then I have to make a free throw to end the lift. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then we go to practice, like, we're going at each other. Like, your walk on, your job is to make guys better and go to war in practice. So like, we're in practice, like, if Kevin's guarding me, I'm trying to cook his shit. I'm trying to abuse him.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. And I would kill him.
And let him know, too.
Kev didn't have the foot speed, man.
Every single guy in that roster I killed at some point or another. It's just is what it is. They all ask him whatever. I killed everybody at some point or another. But that's just what it was. And then you go back and it's all love. You play video games. You hang out. You do it again the next day. Like, you spend so much time together that, like, I got to college and I knew these guys for 3 months and it felt like I knew them for like 18 years.
There is nothing. I always try to explain it to people, and it is impossible for me to explain how close we all were. You know what I mean? Like, it to me was impossible to say. Like, we spent every second of the day together, but we all knew each other's limits. You know what I'm saying? Like, I said this to Kevin the other day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's really tough when you're with friends from high school or even before to be like, yo, I'm going to sleep. I don't want to hang out anymore. I just want to go. I want to do my own thing. Like, we all had so much time together that we all knew, you know, if he wanted to go chill by himself, it wasn't anything. But we were just it's tough for me to explain how close we all were. You know what I mean? Like, it really was like a family. That's just how it was. Everybody, you know, like, I call Kevin's mom like Mama Huerter. Like, it's things like that. Like, everybody's mom is their mom for a weekend. Like, everybody helped each other. It's just how it was.
But like, it literally is a family.
Well,
you do like what you do with your family, with your teammates. Like, we eat together. We like take rides together. Like, if you're going down the street to get something, I'm gonna ask you if you want something. Like, it literally is your family. And like, you're living a slightly different college experience than everybody else, and you're kind of having that shared, like, this is us, this is our circle. Like, we have each other's backs because that's all we have. And if we got in a fight, we'd beat the shit out of somebody. Like,
the thing like our experience at Maryland was different from other schools. Like, our living arrangements, we were all like in the same apartment building in rooms like right across the hall in the back corner of an apartment, like going up the back staircase to get to the gym. Like, we kind of, and there were definitely students on campus that used to say this to us, like, as a knock, like, basketball players only fuck with each other. Like, you guys only are cool with each other, only got friends. It's like, we all live together. We all live across the hall from each other. Like, we all walk to the gym together. Like, I unfortunately have to see these guys for 24 hours of the day. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, I don't really want to know anybody else. Like, you're cool. I see you out at campus, but like, I'm gonna go back home, and if I need toilet paper, I'm going and I'm stealing it from Andrew's room. Like if I'm going to play, like if Anthony needs cereal, he's going and he's stealing the milk out of Josh Tomajich's fridge down the hallway. Like all that type of stuff happened. And it was like, if you didn't lock your bedroom door, like your stuff was in a nice way. It wasn't like, we're calling the cops, but like your stuff was getting stolen by somebody, like pettiness. Like, I need silverware. If you didn't lock your doors, someone was coming and taking your forks, and you're finding it in someone else's sink down the hall. And like, that's true brother shit. Like, that's like the things at home, like you get pissed at your brothers for. Like, that's the way it was. And there was, other schools that you go in as a freshman and you're in regular dorms with students and they try to integrate you. They were like, hey, this is your little posse. Yeah, stay with that group. Don't branch out too far.
Yeah. And I think it's great. I mean, it's like the culture we talked about. Like, I don't think most schools are like that. And Darryl would talk to me about the schools he looked at. And like you said, at schools like Villanova, you go room with a random kid. Like, no, from day one, these are your brothers. And you guys will come so close and have an incredible culture. And I think it shows on the court. Guys always helping each other up. And it was just special to be a part of.
I think something else that like is like underrated is like, it's not easy to do what we did. You know what I'm saying? Like, because at every point of your college experience, like there's somebody against you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to practice and your coaches are like kind of not against you, but they're on your case. Your teachers are on your case. Your strength coach is on your ass. Kyle Tarp used to yell at me like shit just to like, motivate me, whatever. You go on a road and play a road game. There's 17,000 people yelling at you, screaming at you, like against you. That's the enemy. You might only have that group of 15, 16 plus, the traveling party is 25. Like that is your posse. That's your brothers in arms. That's your bunker buddies.
Yeah, and you would bring it in before games too, like after the starting lineup was announced or something like that. And I remember there were a lot of times on the road where we would all just sit there and we'd huddle up. And Rashid Suleiman said this all the time. And he was like, he told everybody to mute out the outside noise. So when we were at North Carolina my freshman year, it was the loudest pregame announcing I've ever heard. And he brought everybody in. He was like, just mute everything in the background. And everybody just took a deep breath and he was like, this is all we have. He's like, we came here in this circle and we're going to leave here in this circle. It's either with a W or it's not, but we're going to do everything that we can for it. And it's like, when you know you have somebody that, Instagram and Twitter, like that stuff was tough. Like that was tough to deal with, social media. If you airballed a shot in a game, you were getting shit on. Like even as a walk-on, like we were getting death threats on the road. Like people hated us, but no matter what, you knew if anything were to ever happen, like I'd turn around and I knew Kevin was swinging. I knew Reese was, I knew it was one of those, you just always knew you had somebody on your side, and luckily for us, we had 15 people at all times. So
I'm about to tear up, man. I'm about to tear up. I miss it.
There's some things. I mean, there's some stories. I don't know if we can do it where we don't name names, but there's real life stories of some stuff that went down on campus, man. Fights, some
couple smacks,
things behind the scenes, some real life stuff. A couple smacks went down in public areas.
Couple smacks here and there. People forget Kev was a wild card, man, at some points.
I just started yelling things.
Yeah, he was the guy in the back. Hold me back. All right.
No.
Here, Kevin
so
also had
real
no
fast.
boundaries. Kevin would steal all your forks. Kevin would take all of your silverware and not give it back.
I'm the one who had all the forks and silverware. That's not
what
true.
What are you talking about? My room had everything. After my mom.
Your mom visited
my mom
twice a month.
After my mom came and supplied the entire team. That might even be a violation. Buy groceries for the whole fucking team. Maybe that's why everybody liked me. Because my mom paid for it.
Buffalo Wild Wings. We were 25 deep in Buffalo Wild Wings that day.
Yeah, that shit was awesome.
It was great.
Shit was awesome. Okay, real quick before we're gonna do a couple more Q&As because I asked some questions. People had good questions, but real fast. 74-68, Maryland beat Penn State. It was a game that we were supposed to win, a game that we did win. Crowd showed out. Everybody's excited. I think we continue our leap forward toward getting seating in March. So, we won't go too in depth with that. They did their job, but we can come back to that when we hear some of these questions. So, one of the first. Anybody have anything on Penn State?
You don't lose to Penn State at home.
Can't lose Penn State at home, but that is. I know it's bigger in football. That kind of feels like it could be a little rivalry.
I think it's the best
right?
bet.
We talked about it last week. I think that's the one that's brewing.
Yeah, but
ever since Diggs did not shake their hands, I thought that was going to start it. And they beat them at Penn State. They walked up to do the coin toss, and Stephon Diggs and the captains did not shake their hands, and they beat them.
They be whooping our ass in football, though.
Yeah.
They be whooping our ass in football.
Whooping.
Yeah, I mean,
literally.
The only thing I think of.
Remember a couple years ago,
dude. The blackout game.
The most might be the most embarrassing moment in like Maryland sports history. They shut down the school Friday, canceled classes, blackout. What was the final score of that?
We were down 40-0.
Was it like 59-0?
I had to leave and
we were
throw
down
up.
40-0 at half.
Like
I had to leave and throw up because I was sick to my stomach watching that football game.
Hey, where did we head though, Trent?
Like,
Bentley's.
Bentley.
I did what adults do.
They had Micah Parsons on that team?
Probably.
Yeah, they did.
I think they did.
Had to.
Yeah, had to.
Came in there. Oh my God.
It felt like they had Saquon Barkley still too.
What you mean? It felt like they did.
That was the easiest.
They ran all over.
The easiest win of all time for a team, maybe ever.
I think we had Instagram, take over the Instagram for a day. We had recruits on campus, Maryland up and coming football program. Look at us, we have fun, this and that. We got stomped out.
Hey, but Lockley's getting it done. I don't want to hear it. He's slowly. I think the last they've gone 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins. They're doing.
Talk about a red bottom. That's what that game was.
Yeah, that was purple bottom.
You know what we say to that though?
Bottom.
We're
purple bottom.
We're a basketball school. Who cares? The same thing that they say when we beat them in basketball. We're a football school. Who cares? That's why a rivalry is really tough to get started. You need 2 basketball teams to be a rivalry.
You need a brawl. You need a brawl to start a rivalry.
We need somebody to. We need a. Hey, people are saying New Mexico State might be our next rival.
I don't think we want those problems.
Dude, they don't play story in college basketball right now. That whole program in shambles. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah,
we're not even going to get into it because that'll lead us down a crazy rabbit hole. The craziest story in basketball. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up New Mexico State. Okay, moving on. So scouting report real quick. Purdue at the crib Thursday. They just came off of a loss, which freaks me out. Typically, really good teams don't lose 2 games in a row. What do you guys think?
I got a question. I'm going to start with a question. You're playing a guy like Zach Edey. Kevin, he's dominant. He's a dominant college basketball player. Point blank. I think you have 2 options. You can sell out and just say he's not scoring. We're going to make the other guys beat us. Maybe you single out a couple other guys to try to get them to beat you. Or you can say we're going to let Edey get his. He's going to score his. Maybe it could be 30, but we're not going to let the other guys get off. How do you approach this game?
I just talked about this with some when I went to the Purdue Iowa game the other day, and I said to myself, I'm a huge believer when somebody is that big and that dominant that you let them get theirs and you don't let other people shoot. I said that same thing though against Isaac Haas. And we kind of did that. We didn't really double at first. And I talked to PJ Thompson, who's a coach at Purdue, after the game. And he was like, what are you doing? He was like, we're still college kids. Like a hook shot by a 7'4" guy on a single team, no double, is cash money. But if you don't double us, or if you double us, then you're relying on a college shooter to hit a 3, which I think is the smarter play. Personally, because I just don't think college kids are that good on the road.
I am a big proponent in do not let another team's best player beat you. And I think in the case of like a Zach Edey, and they obviously practice this. Like every team doubles this guy. They work on how to get the ball to the second side. Like I'm a big teams get so accustomed to playing a certain style in a certain way that if you just allow them to do what they do, throw the ball inside to Zach, go one-on-one, make defenses collapse, and kick out, hit a three, like that is exactly the type of flow and game that Purdue wants to run. Like right away, I'm like, Zach Edey, there's one guy in this game that if they're going to come in here and beat us in our own gym, it better not be that guy. And that goes with anybody. That goes with any team's best player. Like, I'm going to make somebody else other than their best player beat me. And I think there's too few teams that exist at any level of basketball that are willing to make 3 to 4 passes to find an open shot on any given offensive possession. So if they come down the court and they run cross screens and wedge screens to get Zach the ball on the post, and if we're going to double every time down the court, or we're strategic with it, sometimes we double, sometimes we don't, like, I would be willing to make a bet that they are not going to consistently make 3 to 4 passes to find an open three, because you're inevitably going to be out of position. But I think you got to make them, if they're going to come in here and bang a bunch of threes to beat us on our home court, you clap your hands and move on to the next game. They're the number one team in the country for a reason. But I'm not letting Zach Edey just catch it, go one-on-one, and beat us at their game.
The other thing is...
And they're freshmen.
They're freshmen.
They're young. They're freshmen. And like you're saying, I don't know if they can beat us. And if they do, it's fine. They're a top 5 team in the country. But I think what Maryland needs to do, too, is make the game ugly. You can't have Purdue come down, run all their sets, have 25 seconds on the shot clock, because then they will. They'll throw it in, they'll make the pass, they'll make an extra pass, and probably hit an open three. But if you can speed them up, get them out of their plays, press, and that really starts with trying to get easy buckets for us quick to set up the press. And if we make the game ugly, I think we have a shot. But if we let Purdue come down, throw it in, run their offense, it's hard to beat those guys.
What is something that we scouted, Travis, for Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein, that they ran so much of that they don't run this year?
They used to run this triple screen.
The triple screen. Why, though? Because they had the 2 best scorers and shooters. They don't run it anymore.
They're gunners. Because you know why? Because those 2 guys would come off that third screen, and no matter where you were or how you were guarding it, they were raising up and shooting the ball. And they were like, I'm going to make it, or you might foul me, or you know what? I might miss it, but I'm going to come down and shoot it again. And you're right. They don't do that anymore. And Reese, you were talking about that backcourt. Those guys are freshmen. They're also flawed because Braden Smith, you want to make him a scorer. Like he wants to come off the ball screen and pass and be the, whatever, make him score. Lawyer can shoot the piss out of the ball, but he doesn't want to dribble. So
Braden Smith, go give me 25 to beat us.
Bingo.
Please.
Yes.
I dare you. And if you do it, hey, good job.
Shake his hand and send them back to Purdue with the win. That's
you know
fine.
what they did?
But you said it earlier. This game scares me because you're a good team. You go and you play Northwestern. Those games happen. You're the best team, and they're trap games. It's like it's hard to get up for. Good teams respond. They don't lose 2 in a row like this. I know it's better. We're on our home court, but the loss that they had last week for me is a little deflating.
Painter's watching a little bit extra film today, and he's making his players watch a little bit extra more because they do not want to drop 2 in a row.
They ran swivel, elbow, ball screen, back screen, number 46. They ran that shit 80 times in a row today.
Yeah.
And then they drilled it again.
Well, and I think another thing that doesn't suit us well at the moment is at the end of the Northwestern game, and then the entire second half of the Iowa game, those teams pressed, and they did hard presses, and Purdue handled both horribly. They had 3 10-second calls against Iowa. They turned it over another 2 times. So that's 5 turnovers in 1 half against the press. Then Northwestern, they blow a 12-2 run for Northwestern, and a lot of that was attributed to that press and not getting the ball over the half-court line fast enough. So one thing that they're drilling right now is how to beat that press. And they are flawed. Like, the way Purdue has beat presses in the past, and I've always blamed Painter for this, and I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. But he has his point guard on an island. The same thing happened with PJ. And PJ is one of my best friends, so every time it would happen, I'd lose my brain because he'd get turnovers because nobody comes back to the ball. He expects the guard to beat it. And if they do that with Smith on the road and that crowd starts suffocating a little bit, it'll feel really tight. I'm assuming they will not play that way and that they'll have a different type of press break.
I think anytime you play Purdue, and Maryland's been great at this year, like you got to junk the game up. You got to speed it up. You got to play in transition. If this becomes a half-court game, that's advantage Purdue. And I think every team has kind of figured that out at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
And one other thing is, if you're Purdue, this is a huge game. Maryland has won 10 straight Big Ten games. If you win at Maryland, this is obviously a
10
quad.
straight home.
Oh, yeah. I've won 10 straight Big Ten home games. Thank you. And if you're Purdue, that's a quad 1 win. That's huge for the tournament, because they're trying to get a 1 seed in the tournament. You want to be the lead. Mm-hmm. You want to have that thing near your home.
They're the number 1 team.
And go on to the Final Four.
I'm clocking. We probably won't get to it today. We'll get to it eventually. But I feel like we keep talking about like guys who used to play these schools, guys who play now. The talent level this year in the Big Ten is not what it has been in the past.
There's not many guys. Like there's Zach and there's Trace. But then who else is a guy? Who's going to be first team? Jameer's a guy. He is. He is very, very good.
Ohio State.
We used to play guys.
Freshman from Ohio State.
We used to play guys day in, day out.
I know.
It was
Ohio
dudes.
State
It was like 2 or 3 dudes on a team.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Dude, I hate to say it. I feel like that's kind of a thing across college basketball, though. Like, there's not as many like just straight up single studs like there. I feel like there was in the past. Like,
but you know what's tough about that, and I hate doing this because I do it too. Do you guys go watch high school games and you think, what the hell is that? I would have gave them 40.
It's bullshit.
You know, and then the generation before us would always say, you guys would never been able to play. And I feel like that's kind of a trend. So I never want to say college basketball's falling off because I know if I was in it, I wouldn't feel that way. But like looking at it right now, and I guess there is evidence to prove that. Like, how many guys are going to the NBA from the Big Ten? How many guys from Maryland's team will be in the league? And I know that's not something that happens every year, but is there an NBA guy? That was a question, so that can segue into this. One of the questions was Hakeem Hart. Should he come back? Is he an NBA guy? And then I'm going to add to that, do we have an NBA guy on our roster? Awkward.
I think we have guys that'll be close. I think it's tough to say. Like I think Dante would have the most NBA ready body. Dante, I think, has to prove his shot making ability to play at the next level. I think like athletically and strength wise he can. Jameer, any small point guard going to the NBA, you got to be elite at scoring the ball. Like you got to change games based on being able to put the ball in the basket. Hakeem has really good size for what he does. And it's, I think there's a little bit there to be desired. He played really well in that Penn State game, and I think for him, he's definitely taken a step this year from his production in the past, especially his confidence. But I think there's guys that'll be right there. I don't think there's anyone right now that you're saying is going to get drafted necessarily.
My issue with thinking the guys in the next level is like, to be a good college basketball player, you can be good at a lot of things across the board and not be great at anything. To stick around in the NBA, you have to be great at something. Shooting, defense, ball play, making plays, whatever it is. And I look at our guys, and I don't know if they're consistent enough at one thing to be pros right now. Like Hakeem is like, we know he can make shots, but he hasn't been quite consistent enough as a jump shooter to say like, oh, when he gets to the next level, he's a 3-and-D guy. You know what I'm saying?
I just think like even like a guy like Dante, like, and this isn't really great comparable. It's first guy I think of. Isaiah Livers played for Michigan a couple years ago. He was a 4-man. He was a slasher. He played in transition a lot in college. He would hit a 3 here and there. Like he's getting minutes right now for the Pistons because he's a 3-and-D wing. Like he stands in the corner, he makes shots, and he picks up. He plays with really good effort defensively. Like that is what Dante would have to work himself into. Like he's athletically superior. He's strong. He can guard. I think he's got to do a little bit better, but I think he has the ability to guard at a high level. It's like literally he's just got to improve his shot making. You're going to fall into a role in the NBA.
You're the only difference between those two guys is in college, Livers, if you left him open, he was making shots. Like if you left him open, he was making shots. Tell you leave him open right now, he might make it. He might come up short.
It depends on the day. It depends on the day.
Streaky. He's streaky.
And there's 3 things in the NBA in my mind. You have your superstars, you have your specialists, and you have your parasites. And obviously superstars, KDs, those guys, max contracts. Then you have your specialists. that just are complete knockdowns. But in order to be a knockdown, you have to be able to play defense too. Hence, a Duncan Robinson. You can't still be a guy that runs out there and in the playoffs, they're saying, okay, I want that guy, and you can't perform being that guy that gets switched out on LeBron. You got to at least slow him down. You're not going to stop him every time. And then there's the parasites that, they're just on teams, and then they'll go get another team, and then they'll go get another team. And to be honest, that's potluck, in my opinion. So unless you're one of those three guys, which the last one you can't rely on, or, you can't train to be a guy that just luckily makes contract after contract after contract, and you're like, how the hell is that guy still in the league? You got to be a specialist in something. And superstars are one out of every, 100,000, 100 million.
Going back to the Hakeem, I think Hakeem has good size and length, and he can shoot it. It's just the other areas that this year have been coming along. I think he's going to be a guy that'll have a chance. He'll get workouts and he'll travel around, and from there, it's what type of player is he going to turn into at the next level.
How'd you make the NBA, Kev? Like, you look at it, you're a sophomore in college. You had a good year. It wasn't crazy, but you had a really good year. How'd you make the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's so long. I mean, we could talk about this for half an hour, have a whole pod on it. Like, just dumb it down. I played really well at the combine. Like, I was not on draft boards. I went and did a couple workouts and played my ass off at the combine, made shots, showed the ability to play make a little bit. Hopefully wasn't a liability too much defensively. But like, and I tell people, like, if I couldn't, shooting the ball is what keeps me in the NBA. All the other things are just supplements that, hey, he's more than just that. But I'm well aware, like, if I all of a sudden became a 30% three-point shooter, like, I would not be on the court anymore. So there's certain things that, like Travis said, you have to be really good at one thing in the NBA and do a lot of other things pretty well. But if you don't have one thing that you excel at more so than most of the other guys on the court, like, it's tough to stick. And you go Herb Jones. Like, Herb Jones, he's the longest, lankiest. He guards the shit. Like every team needs someone like him. You need a Clint Capella. Like, that guy is an elite rim runner, rim protector. Like, you could find any niche you want on any team, but Clint Capella isn't bringing the ball up the court. He's not breaking a press. Like, it's just like, I'm not going, and I'm not blocking shots. I'm not guarding your best player, but don't leave me open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's a story. That's a story time. We have to do that story time eventually.
We're gonna have a full podcast on kind of that, because I won't lie, if you don't know, and it's not some crazy. No, it is crazy. Like, it's his evolution from the end of sophomore year, and I still remember when we played Xavier, and your finger got all screwed up, and that was the first time I thought and you buried a three. My first time I thought to myself, okay, this guy is big time. And then he starts, playing the next season, and he shoots it really well, and he's productive, and he can bring the ball up, and then you put him in the in floppy action, he's coming off screens and he's hitting shots, and you start seeing it a little bit. And then you get to the end of that, and when he tells that story, it's pretty phenomenal how quickly everything happened. So it's interesting. But that's for another time, because we're running out of time. One last question for you guys. This was asked: worst away trip experience. This is word on campus, by the way. Worst.
I always think when I go to away trips, I immediately think, who had the worst hotel?
I have some in mind.
But I'm talking overall. I'm talking
story.
Game 2. I'm talking like we got our ass kicked, because I know who had the worst hotel. I mean, it was Penn State's hotel was shit.
Penn State was
not
so
even
bad, bro.
the Nittany Lion Inn, bro.
They didn't even have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Dude. Like, and their beds sucked, dude. I felt like I was in 1700 like Plymouth, getting off the Mayflower.
Honorable mention though, do y'all remember Purdue? We stayed in that tropical hotel that
with
had
the water park.
That had the water park.
Nema was like, bro. Nema was like, big time hotel, big time. And then we ate dinner there, bro. And I'm picky about like cleanliness of food. I looked at Mello or who? No, I think it was you, Travis. I looked at you and I was just like, we're getting pizza tonight.
We were eating dino
I don't
nuggets.
give a fuck what sorry for throwing the F bomb. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not eating a 19-pound burnt. It was just terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced.
I ate 2 Dino Nuggets and 8 Uncrustables for dinner that night. And I washed it down with fruit by the foot. And then we probably got clapped.
The best part about the best part about the road was the snack room. Oh. Remember Kyle would set up all the snacks, and it was like a mad rush for the chips. Like we're all going in there crushing chips.
That elevator ride was the most anticipated elevator ride after we got through our stretching and stuff like that. We'd get on that elevator, and everybody knew where they were going. You know, everybody knew we were heading to the snack room to go get the pretzels, the Uncrustables, especially the chocolate Uncrustables. Those things slapped. You know, the grape jelly Uncrustables. It didn't matter. And then, you know, there was always that one guy, typically like a Terrell, that would just grab stuff and just throw it everywhere and break the boxes open and just screw with people. But for the most part, that was tackle football in there.
Josh was sick.
I was hitting people in the nuts.
I have a real
Josh
quick.
Was sick.
I didn't get to tell this with Daryl. I have a quick story. I roomed with Jared Nickens my second year, and Daryl was like a little kid. We talked about how much he used to smile and just screw around with people. Daryl was a kid. We'd get back from shoot around, and this happened multiple times. We'd get back from a shoot around, and like you're sweaty, and you go back to your room, and you still have all your gear on. And the MO is like you change in your room, you put your loop out in the hallway. The equipment guys come pick it up. So I would always let Daryl like into our room. Him and Jared had like a funny, close relationship, and he would always come to our room, and Daryl would like get under the covers in Jared's bed, like all sweaty and like with his socks on, and he would just like sit there like a kid, like waiting for Jared to come out and react. And this like Jared used to get so pissed, like come out and like want to fight him, and like, bro, get out of my bed, because we're always like, you take a nap during the day. And this happened, and Daryl would just like sit there and giggle and laugh. I have so many videos of it, but he would just like, he would lay in his bed all sweaty with all his clothes on.
People like Daryl would come into our room, and he like would just stand there and just like stare at us. He wouldn't say a word, but like he would just sit there and stare at us. And like I would take a nap, and I'd wake up, and he'd still just be like staring at me, giggling. Like, how'd you sleep?
How'd you sleep, Daddy Drew?
I was like, I think good.
He called you that? He called you that? He called you Daddy
Bro, he's whispering in my ear. He's like, Daddy Drew, how are you, big boy?
Oh, you're exposing Daryl. I'll tell you what, though. He could never be bored, though. He could never be bored. He would always find someone to talk to. And he loved Josh,
my last year, if you had asked everybody on the team who their best friend was, I think 8, 9, 10 of the guys would have said Daryl. He was.
And then he left. And then he went to Marquette.
Oh, bro.
Everyone
he
wanted
needed to leave. He needed to change that role. He did his job. Shot it well. Yeah, I would agree.
Fulfilled his duty.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that you could you just trusted, like, no matter what it was. Because he has a story too, and when he comes on, he can choose to tell his story, but he can relate to so many walks of life. So if you felt a certain type of way, he was a good guy to like just go talk to. So, you know, we talk about him being a kid. He had the giggly, childish side. He had the, you know, I'm from Baltimore, blah, blah, blah side. And then he had the, you know, the sensitive, like, hey, you know, I feel you. And somebody that you could really, really trust. Yeah. So real quick, since we're literally on the neck of time. Worst road game, though, period. Do you guys have one that comes to mind? Because I do.
Penn State, we got whooped. I heard the Nittany Lion. Me and Drew bet, 70 times? I think we heard 130.
The Nittany Lion roar. And then when we got in halftime at that game, people forget we were neck to. Kevin, I don't know if you were on the team there. No, you definitely weren't.
You remember? Was that with sticks?
And wow. We had people that were nose to nose. I mean, at halftime, people were about to get to brawling. I mean, it was embarrassing.
That's what Penn State does to you, man. That's where dreams go to die.
Dude, there's nothing worse than walking into a gym right after you just played Michigan State at home, 17-5 in the crowd. You knew that, hey, you know, we're about to kill a 30 stack of Natty Lights. We're about to do all sorts of stuff. And then 3 days later, you're walking into Penn State with 10 fans. And for whatever reason, Penn State always like was hyping around like they were, like the players were good. Like they're talking shit and they're 2-10. I loved reminding them that you guys might make the NIT this year. You know, it was one of those. So I always thought that was the worst road experience for me, besides Purdue's Mickey Mouse Hotel when we went to Chuck E. Cheese for dinner.
I think we went to Florida my sophomore year. You know, we didn't play the non-league games that really necessarily got you like super excited. So we went down to somewhere in our second year, and we played St. Bonaventure first, who
beat the fuck
didn't have Jalen Adams, who didn't have bro. It was one of those games like their star player went out and we're like, we should have beat these guys by 20. Now we're gonna beat them by 30. And they beat us in that gym, and that was just like, I feel like that kind of turned that trip pretty miserable.
You remember where we went right after that too?
One of my worst.
Q's, baby.
We didn't go home. We went to Syracuse. That's for another story as well. That's one of my favorite Kevin stories of all time. All right, we are running extremely late. I apologize. If you've listened this far, you're the man. We will continue with these type of stories. We're fired up. We're excited. We got Purdue, and then I think we got Nebraska. Guess what, Nebraska? We're going to beat the living shit out of you. Purdue, it's going to be a good game. Score the ball, get into the press, create pressure. Braden Smith, if you're hearing this, please score 25. That's the only way that you're going to win, big boy. 4 shots, force the issue, turn the ball over. This is another episode of Old Terps Podcast. We appreciate you guys listening. Tune in next week. This is Kev, Andy T, Reese Mona, Travis Valmon. Dream team, how great are we?
Eat your vegetables, kids.
Beyond the Big Ten is a network of podcasts that aims to be your go-to resource for all things Big Ten. We cover the entire conference with shows hosted by ex-players and athletic alumni, aiming to be your go-to source of information and entertainment for your favorite team. Hosted by ex-Big Ten players, media, and insiders, our podcasts are focused on giving diehard fans and those alums an inside scoop about the teams and people that make the Big Ten Conference one of the most watched and most talked about conferences in sports. We're excited to talk Big Ten basketball with you wherever you may be. Subscribe now.